He said it on a Sunday morning in March. Not loudly. Not with cruelty in the theatrical sense. No slamming doors. No raised voice. No performance. Daniel was not that kind of man. He said it the way he said most things. Calmly, with the quiet confidence of someone who considers himself simply honest rather than unkind. He had his jacket already on. He had a bag by the door that I noticed had been packed before I woke up, which told me the conversation had been coming for longer than this morning. He looked at me across the kitchen and he said, with genuine certainty, "You won't survive a month without me." I said nothing. Not because I had no answer. I had several, moving through me simultaneously in the specific churning way that emotion produces when it is trying to become language and cannot find the right form. I said nothing because something in me understood, in that moment, that there was no answer I could give him that would mean anything. He had made his conclusion. He was comfortable with it. Any response I offered would be evaluated and dismissed within the frame of a belief he had held for 3 years, that I was someone who needed managing, who could not be trusted with the unsupervised operation of her own life, who should be grateful for the steadiness he provided and appropriately aware of what its absence would cost her. I had nothing to say to that frame. So I watched him pick up the bag. I watched him open the front door. I watched him walk down the hallway of the apartment that was his and toward the elevator. He did not look back. Neither did I. 3 years later, on a Tuesday afternoon in March, the same month which I have come to think of as mine now, my doorbell rang. I crossed the living room to the door. I opened it, and I froze for exactly 1 second. He was standing in the hallway in a delivery uniform, a package tucked under one arm, a scanner in his other hand. He was looking at the number on the door when I opened it, and when he looked up and registered my face, the thing that happened to his expression happened in slow motion. The recognition, the confusion, the recalibration, and then the thing that followed the recalibration, which was the particular stillness of a person whose brain is processing something it doesn't yet have a category for. He looked past me, into the apartment. The living room was visible from the door, the floor-to-ceiling windows behind it showing 42 floors of city and sky, the furniture I had chosen because I liked it rather than because someone else had chosen it, the view that I had looked at every morning for 8 months and had not yet stopped being grateful for. He looked at all of it. He opened his mouth slowly. I reached out and took the package from under his arm. I took the scanner from his other hand. I signed my name. I handed the scanner back. I closed the door. The next morning, 99 missed calls. I did not answer a single one. Before I tell you what I built in those 3 years, please take a second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments what country you are watching from. Now, let's begin. My name is Victoria Reyes. I am 34 years old, and I want to describe as honestly as I can what I was when Daniel Holt told me I wouldn't survive a month without him. I was 28. I had a marketing degree I had not used in the way I intended to use it, a job at a mid-sized PR agency that was stable and adequately compensating, and that I had not grown in for 2 years because the growing required time and energy that I spent differently. I had 3 years of a relationship that had, over time, and without any single dramatic event, arranged me into a smaller version of myself. Not through cruelty, but through the particular diminishment that happens when you live alongside someone who believes they are the competent one. Daniel was a financial analyst. He was good at his job and he knew it, and he had the calm, certain authority of someone for whom competence has always been native. He was not a bad person, and I mean that in the way I always mean it when I say it, accurately, not generously. He was not abusive. He was not unfaithful. He was not the villain of a simple story. He was, however, someone who organized the world into capable people and people who needed guidance, and he had placed me, gradually and without consulting me, into the second category. Over 3 years, the organizing had become so complete that I had stopped noticing it was organization. He handled the money, our money, in the apartment that was technically his because he was better with numbers. He weighed in on my work decisions because he had more experience in professional environments. He expressed concern when I spent time on what he called my project, which was a content and brand strategy consultancy I had been quietly building in the hours before and after work for almost 2 years. He called it my project the way someone describes a child's hobby, with a particular blend of indulgence and skepticism that says, "I'm not going to take this from you, but I'm also not going to take it seriously. You're not an entrepreneur, Vic. You're a good marketing coordinator who's good at writing. There's nothing wrong with that. Not everyone needs to build something. He said that in January, 2 months before the Sunday in March. I did not argue. I wrote it down in the notebook I kept for the project, underneath the revenue projections for Q2. The project had a name, Signal Creative. It was a content strategy and brand consultancy, the kind of work I had been doing unofficially for 2 years, helping small businesses figure out what they were saying and how they were saying it and who they were saying it to. I had 4 clients when Daniel left. 3 were paying me enough to make the work financially real. 1 was a referral I had taken at a reduced rate because the work was interesting and I wanted to see what I could do with it. The month after Daniel left, I moved into a studio apartment in the Wicker Park neighborhood. Affordable. Mine. A place where I could spread my work across the kitchen table without anyone describing it as a project in that tone. I will not tell you that the first month was easy, because I told myself when I started writing this story that I was going to be honest. The first month was the hardest month of my adult life. Not because Daniel had been right, but because the specific fear of proving someone right is its own particular opponent. I worked through it. Literally, I worked long hours at that kitchen table, and the work was what I had when everything else felt uncertain. Month 2, I signed my 5th client, a regional restaurant group who needed a complete content overhaul across 6 locations. Month 3, I hired my first contractor, a designer named Marcus who was freelancing between agency jobs and whose work was exactly what Signal needed at a rate I could manage at the time. Month 6, I moved out of the studio into a 2-bedroom apartment where the 2nd bedroom became the office. Year 1, 8 clients. Marcus full-time. 2 additional hires. Revenue that looked nothing like what I had been making at the PR agency, and everything like something I had built. I want to be specific about the work because the work is the actual story, and I think stories that skip the work do a disservice to the people who need to know that the work is what it is. Not glamorous. Not effortless. Not a single breakthrough moment where everything clicked. A kitchen table and a notebook and 4 clients that became 8 that became 16 through the specific and unremarkable mechanism of doing good work and then doing more of it. Year 2, I opened a small office on the north side of Chicago. 12 employees. A client roster that included 2 national brands and a technology company that had found us through a referral from the restaurant group. Revenue that I reviewed every month with the specific satisfaction of a person looking at a number they constructed themselves from nothing. Signal Creative was acquired, partially, in my 3rd year of operation. Not a full acquisition. A strategic partnership with a larger agency that wanted our team and our methodology and was willing to structure an arrangement that allowed me to retain control and continue building. The terms of that partnership included something I had not expected to be negotiating at 31 years old, a significant amount of money that I had not had in any previous chapter of my life. I spent several months deciding what to do with it. Then I signed a lease on a penthouse apartment on the 42nd floor of a building in the West Loop that had floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that I had no practical justification for, and that I chose specifically because I wanted it, and because I had spent 3 years building a life where wanting something and being able to have it were, for the first time, the same conversation. I moved in 8 months before the Tuesday in March. I had not thought about Daniel Holt in a long time. That is the truth. And I am aware that it is not the truth people expect when they hear this story. The truth they expect is that I thought about him every day, that his words followed me, that I was fueled specifically and continuously by the need to prove him wrong. That is a cleaner story, and it is not mine. The honest version is that I thought about him occasionally in the way you think about specific things that were formative, not with longing, not with anger, but with the particular interest of someone examining a piece of their own history and noting what it tells them. I thought about what I had been in that kitchen. I thought about the project he had called a project. I thought about what I had not been willing to give up even when someone who was supposed to love me had assigned it to the category of things that did not matter. I did not think about him on the Tuesday afternoon when the doorbell rang. I was in the middle of a call when it rang. I remember that specifically. I put the call on hold, crossed the room, opened the door with the casual expectation of a delivery that I had been tracking on my phone and forgotten about in the hour since. And he was there. I want to describe those 30 seconds in the doorway precisely because I think the precision matters. He registered my face in the way you register a face from years ago, the slight lag before the name, the recalibration, and then his expression moved through several things in a few seconds. The uniform he was wearing was from a delivery company I used regularly, which meant he had been delivering packages in the building before and might deliver them again, which was information that passed through my mind and was filed away. He looked past me. I have thought about that look many times since. Not with satisfaction, with something more clinical. He was looking at the floor-to-ceiling windows and the 42nd floor view and the apartment I had chosen and furnished and lived in for 8 months. He was looking at the physical evidence of a distance he had not known existed between his prediction and my reality. His mouth opened. I reached out and took the package. The package, as it happened, was addressed to Signal Creative, attention Victoria Reyes. My company name. My name. On a label in print at the door of the apartment I was standing in. He was looking at the label when I took the package from him, and I watched him read it, and I watched him understand what he was reading. I took the scanner from his other hand. I signed my name, Victoria Reyes, the same name I had signed at the bottom of the partnership agreement, the same name on the website that had, in the past year, been featured in 2 industry publications, the same name that, if he searched for it that evening, and I assumed he would produce a picture of the person who had just closed a door in his face. I handed the scanner back. I closed the door. I stood in my apartment for a moment, on the 42nd floor, with the city visible through the windows behind me. Then I went back to my call. 99 missed calls. That is not a detail I invented for effect. My phone showed 99 plus, the maximum the display registers before collapsing into a symbol, beginning that evening and continuing through the following morning. The calls came from a number I did not have saved and did not need to look up. I did not answer. Not because I was building to a conversation, not because I was waiting for the right moment to say the right thing. I did not answer because there was nothing to say. Not on my side. He had said what he had to say on a Sunday morning in March 3 years earlier, in a kitchen, with a bag already packed by the door. You won't survive a month without me. I had not answered then either. I had simply watched him walk away. And then I had turned back to the kitchen table and opened the notebook and gone back to the work. The work answered him. The work had been answering him, quietly and continuously, since the morning he made his prediction. It answered him at month 2, when I signed the 5th client. It answered him at month 6 when I moved out of the studio. It answered him at year 1 and year 2, and the morning I signed the partnership agreement. By the time he rang my doorbell, the answer was 30 seconds of silence and a signature on a scanner and a closed door. I do not need anything beyond that. I never did. People ask me sometimes what it felt like when I opened that door. The honest answer is that it felt like a number being confirmed. You run a projection for 3 years. You track the data. You watch the number grow from something that barely covered the studio rent to something that signed a lease on the 42nd floor. And then a man stands in a uniform in your doorway with his mouth open and the view of your apartment reflected in his eyes, and the number is confirmed in a way that no spreadsheet can confirm it. Not because his shock is what mattered. It didn't. I would have built Signal Creative if he had never made his prediction, if he had never said a word, if he had simply been a person who was not in my life. I would have built it because it was mine, and I was not willing to let it be called a project in that tone for the rest of my life. Here is what I want you to take from this. The people who tell you that you won't survive are telling you something about themselves, about what they need you to believe in order for the arrangement to continue, about what requires your helplessness in order to function. You do not have to argue with them. You do not have to make a speech in the doorway. You do not even have to feel triumphant when the door closes. You only have to do the work. The work speaks. The work was always going to speak. Sign your name. Close the door. Go back to what you were doing before the bell rang. The calls will come. You already know you're not going to answer.